Welcome to another edition of What's Relevant here at Duo Tech Services. Now today we're going to talk about something that is the layers below our previous video, looking at some kinds of projects. Now what we're actually going to look at are what are the considerations that go into building something that goes into a component or a module or a unit or a system, those things that we need to look at when we're building a bid, we're putting something together, and we're saying these are the things that need to be done for you in order to provide you that product. What are some of those things, Silas?
Well, so definitely the first bit is getting the requirements,
Sure.
right? I've got to figure out the requirements. Now, we could get requirements from a couple different ways. We could have someone come to us and say, hey, I've got a thing and I need something just like it, or something that solves this problem, and it's easy to get the requirements from that existing thing. You could also have someone say, hey, I have a problem and I just need a solution to that problem, and so that could look entirely different. We might spend a period of time just getting the requirements, meeting with the customer, having conversations, visiting the sites, figuring out what it is that the needs are so that we can generate those requirements. Once we get those requirements, then we've got to break those down into the major categories. And in our experience, having done these projects, we kind of have these 7 or 8 major areas that we look at in each of these bids. Electrical, mechanical, thermal kind of goes along with that, the interfaces, plus you got to think about documentation, training, deployment, maintenance and support, and delivery and everything, integration. So
how
all
long
those
can you build
pieces,
this thing going down the road?
How long are you going to be able to support it? So all that stuff is some of the things that you got to take into account beyond just making the design.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now looking at some of these, we'll pick on a few of these aspects. Now when it comes to an electrical requirement, the electrical portion of a bid or design, that's related to many things. That has to do with, well, what kind of power is coming in? How much power do I have? And that impacts other aspects of the design going down the road. Right?
Sure, and how much power efficiency do you need?
Absolutely.
Because, and then that impacts your thermal and your cooling and how much cooling capability is there where the system is going to be used. So, yeah.
And we talked about some of those aspects in a previous video about how do you dump heat in harsh environments, airborne environments, and things like that.
Exactly. That can be its own challenge. But yeah, I mean, electrical power is part of that, but then also signal level, right? So if I'm going to have to interface with, analog signals, am I going to have to interface with, communication signals, discrete relays, whatever that may be, that all those things fall into that kind of umbrella of figuring out those requirements.
Absolutely. Electrical begets things like thermal, how much heat can I dump, and then going into the mechanical, well, how do I go about in this structure providing the capability to dump that heat or to provide enough space for the interfaces that are required, because sometimes you may have the interfaces you need, you may have the power you need, but how do you actually go from where this is to where you need to be in providing those interfaces for the signals, right?
Right, and mechanical has to take just not only that into account, how much space is needed. So you kind of have to understand what the electrical requirements are before you can know how much space is necessary, but then how to mount it. I mean, I've got to make sure that it's going to be able to withstand vibrations and shocks and whatever other considerations or requirements that particular problem might have.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's one thing to say this doesn't fall off under a few G's load, but what does that mean when it comes to a lot more of a harsh things like shock? Like a carrier landing is not the same as my dropping a box off a desk, right?
That's very true.
Yeah, and a lot of these platforms that we'll see, there's a lot of vibration requirements that come in, vibration profiles, and the vibration profiles in a turbine-driven maritime vessel is a lot different than a turbine aircraft. Right?
Yeah, and that's very specific as you're looking at the requirements of the system for sure. And even after you've moved past the electrical, you've gone past some mechanical ideas, you've gotten some thermal considerations in place, you have to still look at, okay, I might have the electrical signal characteristics, but how do those signals interface to the thing? Do I need to have specific protocols, and all the different layers of that network stack, what command structure and everything like that? That might require diving into documentation that may or may not exist.
Sure, and then providing something that for aerospace and military customers that require a level of documentation and repeatability that is more than going to a typical commercial application for a cell phone or a walkie-talkie or something like that, something where we actually need all the backup design validation and design data, not just to be able to reproduce it, but to know what we're producing and to provide that level of confidence to the customer in the end, correct?
Yeah, and then that also could include things like training manuals, maintenance manuals, parts lists, and many things that just help with the maintainability of the system. And depending on your requirements, Duotech's also even taken on the whole configuration management tracking and maintenance cycle tracking and maintenance plans, if those are necessary as well.
Sure, which leads into production planning. Now, anytime you're building something that is electrical, electromechanical, anything software-based, you're going to have to look at, well, how long can I continue to build this? Will I still be able to buy these devices at a later point in time? Did the design take into consideration not being able to provide a part down the road, and can that be ported to something quickly and easily that lets you keep your design producible for as long as you want?
Yeah. Definitely being able to have that life cycle concept from the very beginning of the design, so you're not trying to patch that in later on down the road. That helps, too, with making sure that you can maintain design delivery schedule on the customer's requirements for that as well. So.
Absolutely. And in the end, wrapping this all up, putting it into, well, we have all these aspects of the design and of the parts that we consider in going into a design, and being able to provide that in such a way that we can integrate it, perform the validation testing, and provide you, the customer, the end product that you expect, desire, and meeting or exceeding your expectations. If you have an opportunity, visit us online at duotechservices.com. Follow us on YouTube and Twitter.